Thank you. We now move to question number 671, which has been asked by Honorable KJ Millennium to the Minister of Electricity and Energy. The question is about steps to ensure financial transparency and accountability of Eskom, as the entity has not yet submitted its annual report and annual financial statement for the 2023-24 financial year. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Just to say that the inference that suggests that Eskom as an institution mismanages and is corrupt, I think is unfortunate. I want to state here on record that the critical mass of men and women of Eskom are the most consummate, dedicated professionals that contributed to Eskom being voted the #1 electricity provider in the whole world in 2001. The second part to make is that when in the computation of what constitutes an acceptable tariff, NERSA as an independent regulator makes a determination, amongst others. It computes what it refers to as allowable revenue. And that allowable revenue is made up of a number of matrices, including the cost of primary energy, the cost of to the IPPs, the returns on assets. So the attempt to connect, if you like, exclusively the application of 36% tariff increase to mismanagement and corruption, I think it's meritless and it doesn't have any scientific sound basis, because 70% of the tariff application is made up of matrices that cannot be put down to corruption. Having said all of the above, in terms of the existing pieces of legislation, the chairperson of the board of Eskom has written to the executive authority, myself, indicating that as a result of a number of audit queries that they were responding to, Eskom will be in a position to provide the audited financial statements before the end of the calendar year. Thanks, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The first supplementary question will be asked by Honorable KJ Millennium.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, before anyone suggests that this follow-up is a new question, I note that the original question related to greater financial transparency and accountability by Eskom. In light of that, the 2011 High Court case of De Lange v. Eskom Holdings recognized that there was a public interest in Eskom's disclosure of discounted pricing arrangements for South 32's Hillside Smelter, as they impacted on public electricity costs and consumption. This case set a significant precedent for challenging corporate confidentiality on the grounds of public accountability, and was later upheld by the Supreme Court of Appeal. Minister, noting the constitutional obligations for transparency and accountability in government, and as part of the move towards financial transparency and accountability at Eskom, especially in light of Eskom's extraordinary tariff increase application, will you force Eskom to publicize the price they are charging South 32's Hillside Smelter for electricity, and if not, why not?
Honorable Minister.
Well, first is that the instrument of discounted pricing, it's a legitimate and acceptable form of engagement with the private sector. So there is nothing clandestine about discounted pricing. The primary aim of discounted pricing is to ensure that we are able to retain the manufacturing and productive capacity in the country. And how we see discounted pricing, we see it as a subsidy not to the entity itself, but to support livelihoods, the capacity of the country to continue to produce, and therefore for these entities to continue to pay their taxes to the South African Revenue Service. And once it's given to the fiscals, then it gets to be redistributed into the South African economy to allow us an opportunity to meet the social needs of the country. And having said that, there is nothing secretive for Eskom to publish, not only of South 32, but of all other engagements that we have had with other major players in the country. Like I said, there is nothing clandestine and consistent with the requirements of transparency, and for the country and everyone in South Africa to have an appreciation of how we arrive at this pricing. There is nothing untoward in the expectation that some of this should be made public for the purpose of public understanding and comprehension. Thanks, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Next supplementary question is from Honorable MKB Molefe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honorable Minister, have you set in place a policy intervention to cushion the poor from the anticipated exorbitant electricity price increases? If so, what are the details? If not, why not?
Honorable Minister.
Well, thank you for that question, Honorable Molefe. Maybe just to make the point that the legal dispensation provides for an independent assessment of this tariff application by the regulator. And it is not my intention to interfere or swell that process. But there are a few things that I can state here as the executive authority. If you look at the computation of the tariff configuration in the country, there are elements that are of a policy nature. And those elements include, amongst others, the computation of the carbon tax in the determination of that pricing. Now, that's an instrument that resides with the Minister of Finance, and it is not my intention to ventilate those discussions we're having with Finance, but the intention is to see how best we are able to cushion the poor against this proposed 36% tariff increase. The second element of the computation of the tariff, it has to do with what we refer to as the return on assets. And one of the conditions placed by National Treasury on Eskom is that it must recover all the costs. As part of that condition of translating the loans into equity. So the conversation that ought to be had internally is to see how best we are able to, if you look, reduce the pace of the return on asset, because the general rule of thumb in the marketplace is that it should be 10% of your asset base. And we think that we shouldn't accelerate that ROA at the rate at which it is being proposed. The third area of efficiency could be in the cost of primary energy. You know that with the performance of Eskom, the improvement on the energy availability factor, it means that there's a significant reduction in the cost of primary generation because we are not burning diesel. Just today, to give you an indication, we have saved 16 billion rands compared to the same period last year. So I think that it augurs well going into the future for us to bring that cost down. And lastly is to review from an
Honourable Minister, your time has expired, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Mhlongo.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Minister, the failure of Eskom to submit its annual report and annual financial statements has the potential to further undermine the public's trust due to these ongoing delays. Given Eskom's debt problem, what is the department's plan to prevent the erosion of public trust, which could result in
The Honourable Minister. Please continue, Honourable Member.
Given the Eskom's debt problem,
Honourable Minister, if you can reply, please.
Oh yes, I think I get the gist of the question. Just the correlation between the delay in the submission of audited financial statement and the reduction in public confidence. I want to agree with the member there that there's a correlation between the two. And I want to give the member in the House, House Chair, the comfort that the explanation provided by Eskom, I think it's got merit because they were still dealing with major audit issues, queries, and they had requested an extension on the submission of the audited financial statements. And like I've indicated earlier on, the chair of the board of ESCOM has reached to me, giving me an indication and assurance that we'll get those, the process will be completed before the end of the calendar year, and those audited financial statements will be submitted. Thanks, House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Maimane.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I will be taking the question on behalf of Honourable Maimane. Minister, last month, the National Treasury revealed that in the first 3 months of 2024-2025, the financial year, ESCOM has pursued 639 deviations, and that amounts to 23 billion in public funds. And the reason provided was that the ongoing energy crisis necessitates emergency procurement for additional power resources. So that means that 255 million a day has been used to keep ESCOM afloat. What measures are you implementing as a department to ensure that such emergency procurement systems are subject to stricter oversight and transparency? And how do you intend to prevent these deviations from becoming subject to corruption in the department?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Member. Just to make the point that deviations are provided for in law. So that's the first part. But there's a set of criteria that needs to be satisfied for you to be able to make those deviations. So I've made the point earlier on that when these audited financial statements come out, a determination will be made by independent body, if you like, on the appropriateness of those deviations. It is the responsibility of the board to perform a fiduciary responsibility on management, and myself as a shareholder representative, of course, do play an oversight role. To the extent that these deviations undermine the good corporate responsibility, it's something that will receive our attention, and the necessary consequences will be enforced. To the extent that these deviations are appropriate and are meant to ensure that the South African economy continues to function on the back of adequate supply of electricity, these deviations will be allowed. So we'll allow the audit process to make that determination, but the emphasis I'm making is that there's nothing untoward about deviations. They are provided for in law, as long as you are able to meet the minimum requirements for the deviations to be initiated. Thanks, House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Question 710 has been asked by the Honourable M.S. Mbata to the Minister of Electricity and Energy. The question relates to the National Energy Act and the reasons for the delay in publishing the Integrated Energy Plan, and by what date will the Minister present it to Parliament and or update critical but outdated energy-related legislations and interventions? The Honourable Minister.
Maybe just to make the point that the Integrated Energy Plan has got 3 autonomous, interdependent, but mutually reinforcing plans. So the first one is the Integrated Resource Plan. You know that we are in the process of updating the 2019 IRP. And in fact, today we are having the last stages of public consultation. The intention is that in the first quarter or the first meeting of Cabinet of 2025, we will be taking through the IRP 2024. The second anchor of the IEP is the Gas Master Plan. The Gas Master Plan is going through revisions. The fundamental shortcomings in relation to some of the assumptions that underpin the Gas Master Plan, so we are revising those. And then the other one is the Liquid Fuel Plan that my counterpart, Minister Mantashe, is busy on, working on. So when you pull all of these together, they come under the umbrella of the Integrated Energy Plan. So the point I'm making is that we have started, if you like, working on the 3 anchors of the IEP, and we are confident that we should be able to release it as soon as we are done. Like I said, the Gas Amendment Act is before the net-leg process, so it's still undergoing the process of consultations. And the gas master plan, as I've made the point, we are looking at some of the underlying assumptions so that they are consistent with the outlook. Thank you very much, House Chair.
The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Mbata.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Minister, our country is running out of gas reserves, and soon our gas from retailers, which means the gas that is sold to consumers every day, will also run out. What mitigating steps have you planned to make sure that this gas shortage or gas supply shortage doesn't happen? And also, importantly, when are you presenting to Parliament the gas master plan?
The Honourable Minister.
No, thank you very much, Honourable Moses Mbata, for the question. Maybe just to say the following, I think your observations are spot on, that we are likely going to hit a gas cliff late 2027, early 2028. So we're 2 years away from that. If you come to think of it, gas contributes about 5% to the country's GDP. The primary aggregator of gas in the country is Sasol, 880 petajoules per annum. About 67 petajoules goes to private sector players. It is against this backdrop of an impending gas cliff that I've been going around the world just looking for the molecules. We have landed in Qatar. Our conversations with my counterpart in Qatar advanced. We're meeting just this Sunday. And then we are now going to enter into a commercial arrangement. And that commercial arrangement will be led principally by Sasol and Eskom, because we've got an intention of repurposing our power station, gas to power generation. We think that gas is a destination. It's not only a transitional fuel source, and it's going to help us to ensure that we sustain the economic livelihoods of the people of Mpumalanga, because of the density of the power stations in Mpumalanga will be converted to gas. And as I've mentioned earlier on, it is my intention that once we deal with the primary assumptions that underpin the gas master plan, we will come back before this House to present it. Thanks, House Chair.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Mvana.
Minister, considering that the Draft Gas Amendment Act, which was subsequently withdrawn from Parliament in 2021 to enter for public inputs, and the liquid fuel plan, which is currently being updated, are part of the integrated energy plan, has the department revised and aligned the gas amendment bill so that it can be reintroduced in Parliament before the end of 2024 and 2025 financial year? And how far is the preferred bidder in respect of updating the liquid fuel plan, since the finalization of the integrated energy plan depend on this? Thank you. Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Yes, I do confirm, Honourable Mvana, that it is our intention to ensure that the Gas Amendment Act is in fact brought to this House before the end of the financial year as indicated. And of course, the issues around the liquid fuel master plan, like I've mentioned, it is the domain that, it is in the domain of Minister Mantashe, and I'm sure at the appropriate time, he will be able to share with us the kind of progress that is made in that regard. Just to reinforce the point I made earlier on, so there are three primary anchors to the integrated energy plan. The IRP, we are working on it at an advanced stage. We are quite happy to report that it will be considered by Cabinet, and the House will have a sight of that completed extensive public consultation process. And I did say that the gas master plan, what we are doing is to relook at the fundamental assumptions that underpin the gas master plan in the light of the questions that were raised by Honourable Mbata earlier on, the fact that we are likely going to hit a gas cliff soon, but also our intention to repurpose the coal fleet of ESCOM so that we are able to generate gas-to-power solutions and are able to meet the energy needs of the country. Thanks, House Chair.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Milam.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Minister, as you've indicated, the Integrated Energy Plan is an overarching plan that includes the Gas Master Plan, the Integrated Resource Plan, and elements of the much-delayed Renewable Energy Master Plan. One of the major concerns relating to these documents is the lack of constructive engagement with key stakeholders. As an example, yesterday the updated draft IRP was presented to a small number of stakeholders, certainly not the 4,000 or more who made submissions on the 2023 draft, but the document was not distributed beforehand, nor was adequate time allowed for questions or inputs, and a mere 5 days has been allowed for inputs. Minister, do you consider it acceptable that such limited engagement and consultation has been catered for, and are you convinced that sufficient weighting has been given to the inputs of external stakeholders in light of the importance of these plans in securing South Africa's energy future?
The Honourable Minister.
No, thank you very much, House Chair. Just to make the point up front, I'm sufficiently satisfied that the public consultation has been substantive. Let me, for the record, just map this public consultation process. So a draft IRP was announced and released to the public in January of this year. And then we received about 4,300 submissions. About 133 of these submissions are substantive. And we're able to then pull them together into various themes. Others were questioning the assumptions. Others were questioning the modeling. Others were addressing the issues of the two horizons that we have placed before the public, the horizon 2025 to 2030 in the light of load shedding, and then 2030 going forward. Then we said that out of those submissions, it is important that we occasion an opportunity for us to engage with those people who have made substantive submissions. So it's not a select few. It's people who have honored the call for submissions. They made the submissions, but others require that we occasion an opportunity for an engagement so that the IRP is based on science, is evidence-based, and we're able to sit with them on the basis of their articulation and their orientation in relation to the outlook that sits in the IRP. So this was a sufficiently consultative process, and I think the depth and the quality of the submissions will be very evident when we come out. I'm exceptionally happy about the work that the team has been doing. We've been consulting for more than a year, and this is a more focused engagement. It's just deepening that consultation. We have no intention of reopening the process because the law does determine how the engagements happen, and then we've been able to invite those who made substantive submissions, and ultimately is the policyholder that will make a determination on what constitutes the IRP and its complexion.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Paulson.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Minister, I've read the draft of the Gas Master Plan, which was published or was gazetted on the 26th of April 2024 this year. And I agree with you, or with the draft, is that gas is a fossil fuel, but a lot less harmful to the environment. So therefore, it's considered a viable energy source in transition from fossil-based fuel energy sources to renewable energy, right? But the reality is that South Africa's natural gas demand is currently around 393 petajoules per annum, and we can only supply approximately 190 petajoules per annum. So with Sasol's impending cessation of gas supply by mid-2027, are we not again burdening one entity with too much responsibility to supply our gas? What are the other options in terms of gas supply
Honourable
besides
Paulson,
Sasol?
your time has
Thank you very
expired.
much.
The Honourable Minister.
I fully agree with you, Honourable Paulson. I think we are understating the endowments of the country. And I think that we must take a position about what constitutes sovereign interest. I think reserve the right to exploit our own endowments. And that's why working with Minister Mantashe, we are going to ensure that there's full exploitation of those endowments. I mean, if you look at our endowments, are significantly higher than that of Norway. And on the back of the Norway endowments, they were able to build a sovereign wealth fund upwards of 1.2 trillion US dollars. And yet in this country, we sit with people who are hungry, people who are unemployed, and suppressed demand of energy. So there's a coordinated response between myself and Minister Mantashe, supported by Cabinet, to ensure that we continue to exploit this. And of course, gas is a backbone of this transition. It's going to give us base load. There is no country whose energy requirements are met by solar and wind. It doesn't exist anywhere in the world. We accept the technical limitation, the non-dispatchable nature of solar and wind, but nuclear, coal, hydro, gas are a permanent feature of the South African energy mix going into the future. Thank you.